නවපෑ සබන් සහ ක්‍රීම් ජාත්‍යන්තර ළමා රෝග පිළිබඳ විශේෂඥයන් විසින් සායනිකව තහවුරු කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
Tonight, watch out. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe warns that the next 3 weeks will be the toughest yet and outlines his plan.
A lot of people be without food. So the food program which we are initiating is to ensure that all families, even if they have no income, they will have food.
The clincher. The cabinet approves a 40-year tax holiday for future port city investors. Timely help. India approves a $55 million loan for Sri Lanka to buy Maha-season fertilizer. In the air, Sri Lanka's diplomatic tiff with Russia ends after the court allows the Aeroflot flight to take off. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 7th of June 2022.
Life boy shampoo chuti rupiah 70.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're watching First at 9 with me, David Ebert. Now, in a bid to solve the dollar crisis in the country, the Cabinet has approved a proposal to offer special tax concessions for 40 years for port city investors. Further, the Cabinet paper of the Tourism Minister to extend the grace periods given to tourism sector for the repayment of their loans until the 31st of December this year was also approved as well. With that, here's a list of Cabinet decisions taken by the ministers yesterday. At the Cabinet meeting held last evening, approval was granted for a proposal presented by the Minister of Agriculture to import 150,000 metric tons of urea, 45,000 metric tons of muriate of potash and 36,000 metric tons of triple superphosphate required for the Maha season this year and for 2023. Accordingly, the relevant quantities of fertilizer essential to cultivate 800,000 hectares of paddy during the Maha season for the 2 years will be imported by Ceylon Fertilizer Company Limited and Colombo Commercial Fertilizer Company Limited for distribution to farmers. Meanwhile, the decision was also taken to amend the Appropriation Act for the year 2022, since the government had to incur expenditure on other essential functions in addition to those which had been allocated. Further changes in the ministry structure that existed at the time of preparing the Appropriation Act for 2022 have also been considered as a reason for the amendments. Meanwhile, in January last year, the Cabinet approved the amending of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation Act No. 6 of 1982 to include provisions to enable the appointment of a representative from the Treasury, the Secretary of the subject ministry or his representative to the Board of Directors of the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation. Accordingly, clearance of the Attorney General has been granted for the draft bill, which was approved by the Cabinet, for the publishing of the Gazette, which will be submitted to Parliament. Also, the Cabinet in 2017 green-lighted amendments to the Labour Disputes Act No. 43 of 1950 to enable representatives of aggrieved parties to appear before a labour tribunal. Accordingly, clearance of the Attorney General has been granted for the draft bill formulated by the legal draftsman. Therefore, the Cabinet yesterday approved the publishing of the relevant draft bill in the Gazette and its submission to Parliament. Further, this morning at the Cabinet media briefing, more decisions were announced. One such was the awarding of a special 40-year tax concession to investors at the Colombo Port City.
Cabinet Monday විසින් අනුමැතිය ලබා දුන්නා මේ පෝට් සිටි ව්‍යාපෘතිය සඳහා විදේශ ආයෝජන ආකර්ෂණය කර ගැනීම සඳහා සුවිශේෂ බදු සහන වර්ෂ 40ක කාල පරිච්ඡේදයකට ප්‍රදානය කරන්න. ඒට හේතුව තමයි ලෝකයේ තරංගකාරී රටවල් මුළු ලෝකයේ පුරාම විදේශ ආයෝජන ආකර්ෂණය කර ගැනීම සඳහා අපේ රටට වඩා ඉතාම ආකර්ශනීය සහන වරදාන වරප්‍රසාද විදේශීය ආයෝජකයන්ට දෙනවා. අපි උත්සාහ කරන්නේ වෙන රටවල අය අපේ රටට ආකර්ෂණය කරගන්න නම් ඒ තරංගකාරී අනිත් රටවල් ලබා දෙන සහන වලට වඩා වැඩි ප්‍රමාණයක් ලබා දෙන්න ඕනේ. මේක ඉතා වැදගත්. මේ අන්තර්ජාතික වශයෙන් අනිත් රටවල් අතර ප්‍රචාරණය කිරීම මේ වෙලාවේ අපිට අවශ්‍ය ඩොලර් ටික ලැබුණොත් ආයෝජන වලට හරි බැංකු ක්‍රමයට ඩොලර් ආවොත් අපිට හිඟයකින් තොරව තෙල් සපයන්න, ගෑස් සපයන්න, බෙහෙත් ගන්න අනිකුත් දේ සඳහා ඒ බැංකු ක්‍රමයේ හරහා එන මුදල් වැදගත් වෙනවා.
Further, a decision to extend the grace period for the tourism sector moratoriums was also given Cabinet approval.
රාජ්‍ය නොවන බැංකු සඳහා මූල්‍ය ආයතන වෙනුවෙන් මාර්තු 31 වෙනිදා දක්වා දීලා තිබිච්ච ණය සහන කාල සීමාව දැන් අවසන් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම අනෙකුත් රාජ්‍ය බැංකු සහ මූල්‍ය ආයතන වෙත ලබා දී තිබුණු ණය සහන සීමාව ජූනි මාසයේ අවසන් වෙනවා. ඒතකොට මේ දෙකම දෙසැම්බර් 31 දක්වා දීර්ඝකරන හැටියට තමයි ඒ ඉල්ලීම කරලා තිබුණේ. ඒ සඳහා කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයේ අනුමැතිය ලබා දීලා ඒ ඉදිරි කටයුතු සඳහා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න ඊදිනේදී තීන්දුව කළා.
In addition, the cabinet co-spokesperson also commented on a program that the ministry is currently working on to offer benefits to migrant employees in order to encourage them to remit money via official channels.
ඩොලර් අර්බුදය විසඳා ගැනීම සඳහා ණය නොවන විදියට මේ ප්‍රේෂණ ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් මාර්ගය තමයි අපේ විදේශගත ශ්‍රමිකයා එවන මුදල් ප්‍රමාණය. නමුත් පහුගිය කාලේ ඇතිවෙච්ච තත්ත්වයන් එක්ක ඒ මුදල් නිසි මාර්ගවලින් බැංකු හරහා නොපැමිණීම නිසාම වෙනදා මිලියන 700ක් 600ක් නොඑක් මට්ටම් වලින් හම්බ වෙච්ච ඩොලර් මිලියන ප්‍රමාණය ඩොලර් මිලියන 230ට පහුගිය මාර්තු මාසේ වෙනකොට අඩු වුණා. මේ මුදල අවම වශයෙන් ඩොලර් මිලියන 500ක් දක්වාවත් වැඩි කරගන්න පුළුවන් වුණොත් විදේශගත වෙලා ඉන්න අපේ ශ්‍රමිකයෝ ලංකාවට මේ මුදල එව්වොත් හරි මාර්ගවලින් අපිට මේ රටේ තියෙන මූලික ප්‍රශ්න විසඳා ගැනීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා කියන කාරණාව සාකච්ඡා වෙලා විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ සඳහා යම් සහන ලබා දීම සඳහා මේ අයට උත්ප්‍රේරණ ලබා දීම සඳහා අපි වැඩපිළිවෙලක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා කියන එකත් මේ වෙලාවේ සඳහන් කරන්න ඕනි. ඒ සඳහා යම් බදු සහන, ඒ වගේම ඒ අයට තීරු බදු සහන ලබා දෙන්න, ඒ වගේම පොලි රහිත හෝ ඉතාමත්ම අවම පොලි මුදලකට නිවාස ණය ලබා දෙන වැඩපිළිවෙලක්, ඒ වගේම ඒ අයට බරප්‍රසාද කාඩ් එකක්, ඩිස්කවුන්ට් කාඩ් එකක් ලබා දෙන්නත් අපි ඉතාමත්ම ඉක්මනින් කටයුතු කරනවා කියන එකත් මේ වෙලාවේ මතක්.
Now, the Cabinet of Ministers has given its approval for the signing of an agreement with the Export-Import Bank of India for a loan of $55 million to purchase urea fertilizer for the upcoming Maha season. The proposal was tabled by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday in his capacity as the Minister of Finance. India has agreed to provide a loan scheme to the Sri Lankan government for the procurement of urea supplies essential for the cultivation of paddy in the Maha season for this year and 2023. The loan of $55 million will be provided to Sri Lanka from the Export-Import Bank of India for the fertilizer procurement. Further, the Cabinet of Ministers who met last evening also approved a proposal presented by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, Economic Stabilisation and National Policies to sign the agreements for the scheme. So far, the Indian government has provided immense assistance to Sri Lanka to overcome the present economic crisis. Recently, India offered another credit line of $500 million, taking the overall amount of credit provided to purchase petroleum products up to $2.2 billion. Earlier this year, they also gave Sri Lanka a $1 billion credit line to purchase essential food items as well. Now, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has warned that the country could face the worst of the economic crisis in the next 3 weeks and urged people to use fuel and gas sparingly until then. Speaking in Parliament today, the Premier revealed that the country requires $6 billion to get by in the next 6 months to ensure that the daily lives of the public are not disrupted in any way. Meanwhile, responding to a question on the impact of the crisis on industry and trade, he stated that the government's main focus will be to ensure that the people don't go hungry. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe made a special statement in Parliament today, calling for the setting aside of traditional political ideologies for a short while in order to make a concerted effort to rebuild the country. In his speech, the Prime Minister warned that the country faces a desperate situation in the next 3 weeks and urged the general public to use fuel and cooking gas sparingly. In addition, the Prime Minister also noted that Sri Lanka needs $5 billion to ensure the daily lives of the people were not disrupted for the next 6 months. In addition, he added that another $1 billion is required to strengthen the rupee, with $6 billion needed in total to keep the country afloat for the next 6 months. He also stated that relationships with India, China and Japan, who lead the list of countries providing Sri Lanka with loans and assistance, have been broken and needed to be rebuilt. The Prime Minister also pointed out that Japan and India had agreed to supply Sri Lanka with 2 LNG power plants. However, the CEB stopped these 2 projects without any justifiable reason. Further, he revealed that Japan had also agreed to provide about $3 billion in projects to Sri Lanka by 2019, but they were put on hold for no reason. Accordingly, the Prime Minister urged the Parliamentary Committee on Public Finance to conduct an inquiry into the suspension of these projects. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister was posed the question by opposition leader Sajit Premadasa today on the fate of the debt moratoriums provided to the tourism industry and the country's struggling construction industry.
The central bank has come up with a solution that will give a limited moratorium. That means there are many enterprises that don't require moratorium and they are taking cover under the moratorium blanket. They can all manage. Then there are certain number of small enterprises, large ones, which are bankrupt. In the view of the banks, can't be revived. So let's deal with it separately. Then in the center are the ones that require help. We'll bring them under the moratorium. Especially the Minister for Tourism has been speaking with me about the tourist sector, and certainly we will have to give our attention to that. Then in regard to the other matters, I think already we are discussing with the central bank and the concerned people of how do we deal with the open accounts, the letters of credit. So that has to be handled practically. We are at the moment in discussion with the Minister of Trade. It's a big issue. It is like what do you allow, what you don't. Remember that one man's finished product is another man's input. So there are conflicting claims between different enterprises, different sectors. It will have to be done in consultation. The third one covers the construction sector. Well, this year I have to transfer all the money to the people, to feed the people. So there will be a slowdown in the payments to the construction sector as much as to many other sectors. There will be a complete slowdown of payment. We'll pay what we can, but we have put a target. We must at least have 800 billion or more. So there are going to be a large number. The leader of opposition said many people are be unemployed, a lot of people be without food. So the food program which we are initiating is to ensure that all families, even if they have no income, they will have food. And we can have community kitchens in temples, churches, others to supply. The community has to get involved. Without it, we can't feed them. Secondly is the money to be given to the people. So if we don't give payments to them, there will be another political instability. So let's do that, but I know the construction trade and the tourism are two sectors which are facing a lot of difficulty, but we first have to feed the people.
I'm fully with this concept that we all have to get together and work together. There's absolutely no doubt about it. However, one has to be mindful that the construction sector, the tourism sector and the SME sector, they are the engine of Sri Lanka's growth. That's the engine that enacts our dynamo to achieve progressive growth. And this is vital. This is important. We all understand that there are priorities that you have to make, and I fully agree that the people have to be fed. That's a basic human need. We cannot keep people in hunger. But Honourable Prime Minister, please do realize, with the construction sector, with the tourism sector, with the SME sector going bankrupt and people are getting unemployed, that's a direct causation for lack of livelihood, lack of earnings, downgrading of standard of living, which will ultimately result in hunger. So this is a very important matter that I raised. I'm not saying this is an easy situation, that there are easy solutions. Not at all. It's a difficult situation. And you have taken an unenviable brief. So what I'm trying to say is it is also very important to go back 2.5 years in time as to find out where this Pohottuwa government went wrong. At each and every juncture, members of this parliament were just uncritically raising their hands and saying, yes, yes, Your Excellency, yes, my Lord, yes, Honourable Speaker. Every time, yes, 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 without critical examination of the facts. The truth was put into a waste paper basket.
And we'll be back with more news after this short break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. After 4 days grounded at the Bandaranaike International Airport, the Airbus A330-343 airline belonging to Russian carrier Aeroflot took flight to Moscow yesterday at 3:52 p.m. The controversy over the seizure of the plane almost resulted in a major diplomatic rift between the Russian Federation and the Sri Lankan government, when the Commercial High Court issued an injunction in response to a case filed against it by an Irish company on the 2nd of this month. The incident led to diplomatic protests and a suspension of the thrice-weekly Aeroflot flights to the island. In response, the Sri Lankan government had rushed to reassure the Russian Federation that the injunction was purely of a commercial nature and promised to stick to its previous safety assurances for Russian flights. Yesterday, after a motion was filed by the Attorney General with regards to the diplomatic impact of the injunction, the court permitted the departure of the flight. A group of aviation officials, including the chairman of the Airport and Aviation Sri Lanka, retired Major General G.A. Chandrasiri, met with the Aeroflot crew prior to their departure. Rosaviatsia, the Russian Federal Agency for Air Transport, in a statement expressed its gratitude to the Sri Lankan authorities for the decision made to release the aircraft. This was followed by the Russian Foreign Ministry, who also expressed their appreciation for the local authorities. Meanwhile, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that more fuel stocks will be issued to the market from tomorrow, as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is expecting more shipments on the 9th and 10th of this month. He also said that steps will be taken to provide diesel to private buses, school buses and to buses and vans in the tourism sector through Sri Lanka Transport Board depots from tomorrow, in order to ensure transportation in the country is not affected. Large queues continue to be seen outside refueling stations across the country due to low fuel stocks. As usual, some stations continue to remain closed due to the lack of fuel. Speaking in Parliament today, Minister of Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said that the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation issued limited stocks of diesel and petrol during the past few days in a bid to manage existing stocks until the arrival of the next shipment. However, he added that more stocks will be released to the market from tomorrow, as they were able to secure fuel shipments which are expected to arrive in the next few days.
මේ වන විට අපි දෛනිකව 3200ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් තමයි ඩීසල් වශයෙන් අපේ වෙළඳ පොළට නිකුත් කරන්නේ. පෙට්‍රල් වශයෙන් අපි 3400ක් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් නිකුත් කළ යුතු තිබුණත් අපි මේ වන විට 2800ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් තමයි අපි වෙළඳ පොළට නිකුත් කරන්නේ. නමුත් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මෙට්‍රික් ටන් 5000ක ප්‍රමාණයකුත් ඒ වගේම මෙට්‍රික් ටන් 3500ක් වශයෙන් පෙට්‍රල් ඩීසල් කියන දෙකම හෙට ඉඳලා නැවත වතාවක් අපි වෙළඳ පොළට නිකුත් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ඒ තීන්දුව නැවත වතාවක් අපි ගත්තේ අපි ඇනවුම් කරලා තිබුණු ඉන්ධන නෞකාව අපිට තිබුණේ 16 වෙනිදා එන්න ඉන්දියානු ණය ක්‍රමය යටතේ තිබුණු එක ඩීසල් නෞකාව. නමුත් ඊට පෙර තවත් නෞකා දෙකක් ගෙන්වා ගැනීම සඳහා අපි ඊයේ දවසේ අපි කටයුතු කරා. ඒ නිසා 9 වෙනිදාත් සහ 10 වෙනිදා තව ඉන්ධන නෞකා දෙකක් අපි ලබා ගැනීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. විශේෂ මහ බැංකුවේ සඳහා මුදල් ප්‍රතිපාදන වෙන් කළ තියෙනවා. ඉන්ධන බෙදා හැරීමේදී ප්‍රමුඛතාගත ක්‍රමයක් යටතේ මේ කටයුත්ත කළ යුතුයි කියලා අපි යෝජනා කරනවා.
Meanwhile, due to the prevailing diesel shortages, private bus owners have reduced their fleet numbers yesterday and today, stating that they need a constant diesel supply to ensure uninterrupted operations. Taking the situation into account, the subject minister announced new measures that will be taken from tomorrow in order to solve this matter.
පෞද්ගලික අංශයේ බස් රථ සහ පාසල් ළමුන් ප්‍රවාහනය කරන බස් රථත් ඒ වගේම සංචාරක ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ තියෙන ඩීසල් පාවිච්චි කරන බස් රථ සහ වෑන් රථ කියන ඒවා CTB ඩිපෝ හරහා ඉන්ධන ලබා දීමේ කටයුත්ත හෙට දවසේ ඉඳලා අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. අර කෑන් වලට බෝලි වලට ලබා දීම නැවැත්තුවා මොකද අපේ තියෙන ඉන්ධන සංචිතත් එක්ක. නමුත් හෙට දවසේ ඉඳලා අපිට ඒක ගැටලුවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපේ ඉන්ධන බෙදා හැරීමේ කටයුත්ත සිද්ධ කරනවා.
In the meantime, Mohammad Uwais Mohammad has been appointed the new chairman of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, and he officially assumed duties at the CPC head office today. Uwais Mohammad previously served as the chairman and managing director of the Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited. As for the country's gas situation, cylinder distribution for commercial purposes worked off today at the Litro gas terminal in Muturajavela from the 2000 metric ton LPG shipment that arrived yesterday. Further, the company said that there will be no distribution of domestic LP gas cylinders tomorrow. They said that the distribution will resume soon, as they expected to receive a shipment of LP gas in the coming days. Now, former chairman of the Tangol Urban Council, Ravindu Vedarachi, was arrested along with his spouse Netmi Harindika Silva yesterday on charges of obstructing police officers at the Southern Expressway. The duo were arrested when they surrendered to the Veerakatia police. After producing them at the Valasmulla Magistrates Court, Ravindu Vedarachi, the son of SJB MP Dilip Vedarachi, was remanded along with his spouse until tomorrow. Recently, a video of the incident had been widely circulated on social media, with the mobile phone footage showing the duo engaging in a heated argument with one or more police officers and using abusive language. However, MP Vedarachi yesterday defended his son and daughter-in-law, accusing a police officer of assaulting his son. Now, the former central bank governor Ajit Niwad Cabral, who was accused of the misappropriation of $6.5 million belonging to the government of Sri Lanka, was released on personal bail today. The bail was determined at the Magistrates Court in Colombo by Chief Magistrate Tilina Gamage, who set it at 10 million rupees. Former Central Bank Governor Cabral appeared in court this morning to face a complaint filed by Venerable Tiniyavala Parithatera, who has accused him of misappropriating state funds while serving as the central bank governor during his previous tenure. The complaint alleges that a sum of $6.5 million was paid to an American lobbyist during his tenure between 2006 to 2015 without the cabinet's approval, that the plaintiff says amounts to criminal breach of trust and criminal abuse of funds. Meanwhile, former parliamentarian Ranjan Ramanayaka, who is currently serving a 4-year prison sentence, appeared before the Supreme Court today to face a second contempt of court charge against him. Accordingly, Ramanayaka was sentenced today to 2 years rigorous imprisonment, suspended for 5 years. In 2018, the court registrar had filed a complaint on remarks Ramanayaka made on a television program pertaining to petitions heard by a five-judge bench opposing the decision of President Maithripala Sirisena to dissolve Parliament. Although the former Deputy Minister initially pleaded not guilty to the charges, in March he pleaded guilty and lawyers representing him asked for leniency. The 3-judge bench comprising of Justices Bhuvaneka Aluvihare, LTB Dahidenia and Gamini Amarasekara handed down the sentence today. The judges explained that if Ramanayaka is not found guilty of any other offences for the next 5 years from today, he will not be punished. However, if he commits another offence, the 2-year imprisonment will be implemented. Now, the country has witnessed a rise in murders during the past few days, with 7 reported in the past 5 days. 5 of them were supposed to be due to disputes that have occurred between drug racketeers. In Epavela, 2 people were murdered during the early hours of the day with sharp weapons. The deceased duo were identified as a 31-year-old resident in the area of Andagala in Epavela and a 41-year-old 3-wheel driver. The reasons for the murders are yet to be uncovered. Further investigations into the incident are being conducted by the Epavela police. Meanwhile, in Modara, 2 people were shot last evening and both were admitted to the National Hospital in Colombo. One person, however, succumbed to his injuries upon admission to the hospital. The deceased person was said to be a close associate of drug racketeer Kudu Selvi and Blumendal Logu, who is currently hiding in India. During the past 5 days, 7 murders have been reported in the country, including the incidents reported today. 5 of them were due to disputes that have occurred due to drug racketeering. Shares at the Colombo Stock Exchange ended in the red today as well. The all-share price index lost 2.21% to end at 7,631.13. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 2,454.48, following a loss of 172.48 points. Share volumes were 95 million rupees, while the market turnover was 1.9 billion rupees. The transportation sector, as usual, topped the turnover. The food, beverage and tobacco sectors were the second highest. Foreign purchases were 171 million rupees, while foreign sales were 284 million rupees. Foreign participation in the market remained at subdued levels, with some foreigners closing as net sellers. And that's all the news we have for you tonight. We hope you join us tomorrow at the same time. Good night.